Hey, what up? This is Zach Guilford from Midnight Mass, and you're listening to one of my favorite podcasts, Pop Culture Pastor.
Pop Culture Pastor.
All right, Cody. Your Mad Max verse car is the first car you've ever owned, but Mad Maxified. What are you driving around in the Mad Max verse?
A sweet 1996 Dodge Neon.
That would be hilarious to see a Dodge Neon somewhere in Furiosa.
Yeah, it was a stick shift. And it needed some cosmetic work. So, yeah, you just get one of the people with the white faces to work on it.
Yeah, the Pale Man group.
Yeah.
Mine would be a 78 Chrysler Cordoba, which I think I actually saw one. Maybe I just saw what I wanted to see.
Well, I think it could survive Australia.
Welcome. This is Pop Culture Pastor. My name is Dave. Cody's here.
I am.
And we're going to talk about Furiosa later because we both saw it.
We did.
And we have thoughts.
Many.
You have many thoughts.
I do.
Cody's going to carry this show.
As someone that I will tell you, Mad Max Fury Road might be one of my top 5 favorite movies of the past 10 to 15 years.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want to pick your brain on this because it's not that I didn't like it, but yeah, I'll explain further when we get to our review section because it's just a different kind of movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And this one's more of the same. Like, it's legitimately the same kind of formula. But we'll talk about that later. As always, we start with the news. And you have a news story.
I do.
You came prepared.
So, as we are recording, there was pay-per-view events for wrestling, or PLEs, premier live events. They used to be pay-per-views. Anyway.
Yeah, pay-per-view doesn't make any sense
It
anymore.
doesn't. But AEW had one, and Mercedes Moné, some people might know you as Mercedes Varnado, from hit show The Mandalorian, became the TBS World Women's Champion. She used to be Sasha Banks. Now she's Mercedes Moné.
Oh, okay.
Evidently, Snoop Dogg's cousin.
Now, wasn't she at one of the Comic Cons we went to?
Yes.
Yeah.
She was.
As Mercedes whatever, because I didn't know who she was.
Yes. And I said, hey, she was in Mandalorian, and she's been a WWE champion, and now she's an AEW champion.
Yeah.
First AEW match of her AEW career.
They gave her the title right off the bat.
They did. Well, one of them. I think it's the lesser of the 2 women's titles, but I think it's also good for keeping television contracts going.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Which, that PLE was crazy. They set Luke Perry's son on fire.
Who's Luke Perry's son?
Jack Perry. He used to be Jungle Jack Perry, but now he's just regular Jack Perry. And he's a scapegoat. He's the reason CM Punk left AEW and went to the WWE.
Well, you can take Jack out of the jungle, but you can't take apparently you can't take the jungle out of the Jack. So he's just Jack now.
Yes, and they set him on fire with a flamethrower.
So Cannes was happening. We've talked a lot about Cannes, it seems like, in the last couple weeks.
This Cannes Film Festival just keeps dropping news stories.
Yeah, George Lucas was there. And George had some thoughts about, well, his franchise he created and how Disney may be handling that. He had some negative thoughts, really, which I guess isn't really a surprise. He said some things before, but he said, quote, I was the one who really knew what Star Wars was, who actually knew this world, because there's a lot to it. The Force, for example, nobody understood the Force. When they started other ones after I sold the company, a lot of the ideas that were in the original sort of got lost, but that's the way it is. You give it up. You give it up. And so this made a lot of headlines saying he was criticizing it. To me, it just sounds more like him making peace with, or maybe he already made peace with giving it up and saying, hey, different creative people are going to go different directions with it.
And so for some of the things, I do think that it was cool to see others' interpretations, but I do think that you should always, if Mr. Lucas is around, have him on like an advisory board for your movies.
Yeah. Yeah. He also said there's no original thinking in Hollywood, in Cannes.
Oh, burn!
Yeah. Yeah. What happens now, and it happens in streaming probably more than features, but features, it's the same thing. Nobody knows what to do. The stories they're telling are just old movies. Let's do a sequel. Let's do another version of this movie. And it's not just in movies, but in almost everything. There's almost no original thinking. Here's my thinking. My thinking is it's a little unfair because I think that's more of a complex question than we can really answer. There's way more content now than there ever was before.
I can answer it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So I agree with George, but I also think George, at the time he was making his quote-unquote original ideas, they weren't that original. Dune, the book, came out in the 60s. And so I saw this post on X.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
About how, like, they just basically ripped off Star Wars. And then, boom! Oh, this book came out before Star Wars. Oh, nothing new under the sun, George. I mean, nothing new.
Let's say he did rip off Dune. He managed to tell the story better, in my opinion. At least in an engaging and more engaging way, in a cinematic form, for sure.
For sure, over the movie that came out in the 80s.
Yeah. I don't know. And the more Dune the books go on, they get like excessively crazier. I don't know. I'm sure. Whatever. It's, if you like Dune, that's great. If you think Dune was the greatest and Star Wars ripped it off, I'm not going to argue with you. If you think Star Wars is better than Dune, I'm not going to argue with you. I think the problem with this is it's such a complex thing to talk about because I think there's more content. I think in one sense he's right. I do think Hollywood's, especially for the big budget stuff, is not using their creativity very well. We're not getting very many Oppenheimers and Barbies, but we're getting a lot of it. Barbie itself is taking a property that already exists. They just did something creative with it.
And I think that if you have someone that is a creative type and you let them tell the story through their lens, it's going to feel like something new, even if it isn't new.
Yeah, and it is being a little bit of a grumpy old man. He sounds a little grumpy old manish because all stories are derivative. Mm-hmm. And Star Wars itself is based on the Seven Samurai and a lot of Kurosawa stuff.
He makes mad films.
Yeah, so I don't know. It seems like Lucas is just doing that grumpy old man type thing. But he did have something to say. He did slam on grumpy old men, too. Because he was asked about Scorsese, our friend Marty.
Best friend of the pod.
And him saying that the superhero movies weren't cinema. To which Lucas responded when asked about it. He said, well, the images move, so it's clearly cinema. It's like, oh, snap. Lucas from the top rope.
/ would Marty say Lucas's films are cinema?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe I'm sure they're friends. I was going to say maybe they don't get along. We could get like a celebrity boxing match. But yeah. No, he was asked about it and it is what it is.
I will say I enjoy the TikTok videos that Scorsese's daughter makes with Marty.
They're funny.
She has a knack for this.
How hilarious would it be if she came out the gate, did a couple comedies, and then Marvel got her to do a superhero movie? That would be hilarious, and I'm here for it. I am here for it. We got Steven Spielberg news. All the big names with the news. He's doing another sci-fi movie, an unnamed sci-fi movie in development.
Indiana Jones.
No, stop it. Untitled movie set for theatrical release on May 15th, 2026. No details of it. What do you think? Is it going to be more... What do you think? Is it going to be more War of the Worlds? Is it going to be more E.T.? He's going back to the well. I love Spielberg doing sci-fi. Actually, I don't need to hear any more about it. I'm in. I'm blocking off that weekend.
I feel like there's been so much hype around his recent projects, and either I didn't watch them or I watched them and was very disappointed. So I don't know if I'm actually excited. I got recency bias.
He's got some things to overcome. Ready Player One was not the jam.
Everyone and their mom talked it up.
Well, because it was an existing IP that a lot of people loved. It was beloved. But it lost $175 million, says here.
Indiana Jones territory.
West Side Story made... no, it didn't. It lost money. The Fablemans made a little money. Yeah, he's got some work to do. We'll see. I don't know. I'm still here for some Spielberg.
He should go back to dinosaurs.
Let's talk about Jurassic Park real quick.
Okay.
Since you went there. Because Jurassic Park's an amazing movie. I saw someone saying it was overrated recently on X, and I just thought, why is X the worst? People just say whatever they want to say, and then to them it's reality. You can't argue with anybody on that app. But there was no reason for any Jurassic Park slander.
I don't know why you'd wake up and choose violence like that.
Glenn Powell did an interview for The Hollywood Reporter, and you're like, well, Dave, you're just talking about Jurassic Park. What does this have to do with Glenn Powell? Glenn Powell, who was in the new Top Gun movie.
And will be in Twisters.
He's in Twisters as the cowboy hat.
That looks epic.
Tornado chasing cowboy guy. Yeah, he's kind of that guy too. I like that he's leaning into that.
I like that his parents were holding up signs that said, quit trying to make Glenn Powell a thing.
Yeah, that was awesome. His parents are in on the joke. He's great. I read this whole interview just because it was super interesting. I didn't plan on it. I just did. He said a lot of things, including he was talking about how the role that he played in Top Gun was actually very different, and his character was super unlikable. But he really wanted it to be kind of modeled after, similar to the Val Kilmer character. And so he wanted to play it like Val, where you don't like him at first, but when you get to know him, he's charming and he's a good team member. Like he said in the original script, he wasn't even a good pilot.
I'm not going to lie. Just like Val, he became my favorite person in the whole movie.
And so apparently he had a lot of input on making that character very Val-like. And I think that was a win because his character was awesome in that movie. When really probably it was just a side character. It didn't need to be.
It needed to be.
You could tell it wasn't written like the Iceman character was. You know what I'm saying? Like you could tell that he didn't have as much to work with. But being able to play the character the way he wanted to. Anyways, that's not what I want to talk about. He said something about Jurassic Park that I found interesting. They asked him about his future, did The Hollywood Reporter. And he said he's passed on a handful of recent big tentpole movies, including a Bourne Identity update. Good call. Do we need it?
Maybe. We need
it? And a Jurassic Park reboot. What? I thought we... You can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. Someone said that once.
Jurassic World was a continuation. It wasn't like, oh, we have to like stop and go back and redo the whole franchise. No, you're just continuing. And so I think this is more of we're starting back at ground zero and working our way up.
Okay, but why?
Because graphics are better, budgets are better.
It hasn't even been that long.
Glenn Powell is a funny guy.
Well, he didn't take it. He said this, quote, Jurassic is one of my favorite movies. It's one of the things I've wanted to do my whole life. I'm not doing that movie because I read the script and I immediately was like, my presence in this movie doesn't help. And the script's great. The movie's going to expletive kill. It's not about that. It's about choosing to where you're going to make an audience happy. Do you believe him? This sounds like the script being great. I was instantly like, oh, this is Cap.
This sounds like someone that is great at public relations. He's like, this script was actually trash, but I want to continue to get offered these big roles in case there is a script that's legit.
Him and Hemsworth, man.
Yep.
Him and Hemsworth. If you're confused, you should listen to the last few pods because we have an ongoing discussion here where Cody is convinced that Hemsworth is going to bat for Marvel because he wants to keep making that Marvel money.
Yep.
Or at least for one more big Thor movie. All right. Channing Tatum has plans. What does the Bible say about plans?
Which that's what I thought when Steven Spielberg said, this is coming out in 2026. And I'm like, Steven, you're not guaranteed tomorrow, buddy.
This one might upset you. It might not because you're not a 80s kid, but
I am an 80s kid. Most 80s kid in the studio today.
actually Channing Tatum has plans to remake a movie from 1990. So technically,
I was there too.
this is in your wheelhouse. But apparently, he wants to remake Ghost,
Nope.
the Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore, Whoopi Goldberg movie.
Yeah, nope. You lost me.
Why are we remaking all the Swayze movies? Like, you are not Patrick Swayze.
That movie doesn't need a remake.
I haven't even watched Roadhouse, but everything I've heard about it was bad. And they said they're making another one. Who is watching that movie?
Leah and Jackson.
Jackson.
I am calling both of them out.
They watched that?
Yes.
You didn't watch it with Leah?
No, I told her I wasn't supporting this world.
You have scruples.
I do.
That's why. You have a line that you will not cross, and that line is, I will not see Patrick Swayze remade movies.
Exactly.
That's a lie. I saw the Red Dawn that Hemsworth was in, and I was sorry that I did. It was so bad.
I did not watch it, so I'm good.
It was so bad. I don't need a Channing Tatum Ghost movie.
No one needs it.
I don't even know how you tell that story in some better way. That was a pretty good movie, and I'm not sure how you can improve on that. That's the news segment for today.
Kick rocks news.
It's time to go into full action overdrive with our main subject,
Furiosa.
We saw Furiosa. We'll be right back to talk about it. Okay, so we saw Furiosa. It's time for a Pop Culture Pastor movie review. You know what you're going to get with a Pop Culture Pastor movie review. We're going to talk about the movie. We're going to talk about what's good and what's not so good. We're going to talk about deeper themes because we're pastors and we like to dig into the deep things of a story.
That we do.
Furiosa is the prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, which came out a few years back. Apparently, it's one of Cody's favorite recent movies. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. It is an epic action movie.
Yeah, I think I was going to ask you what that's about. What do you like about Mad Max Fury Road?
Mad Max Fury Road, you get the continuation of Mad Max. Supposed to be a sequel to Thunderdome, but set several years into the future. So Max is even more hardened by living in Australia in the post-apocalyptic world. He's fighting demons, flashbacks. He is just trying to escape. He's not really a hero, or doesn't set out to be, but kind of ends up one at the end. But it's more of his hauntings that is leading him to being a good guy. And then Charlize Theron as Furiosa, she is just as much the lead of the movie as Tom Hardy is. And like, she carries so many scenes with just her grit and raw attitude. Mad Max just is so over the top and ridiculous
Yeah.
And they capture it perfectly. There's this guy playing guitar that's like bungee strapped in and on the war machine, and there's drums, and it's epic. I watched the movie in like regular showing and then watched it in 3D just so I could see that guy like flying across the screen.
Yeah.
There's some great storytelling, and it makes you want to know more about the world that they're living in and the time and like what caused each character to end up where they were. And so that's why I was excited about Furiosa, to see, well, how does Furiosa end up here? Because she seems different than everyone else that is in the wasteland. She seems intelligent. She has some deep convictions, and like she's honorable, and most of the people are just in fight or flight constantly, and she is more methodical than they are.
Yeah. I have in my notes here that it's like a fever dream. Like, you've got the ridiculousness of some of these set pieces and just the characters, right? They're just so over the top. The guy playing guitar, the flamethrowers. I mean, all Mad Max movies are bleak.
Yep.
They're so bleak. Like, there's no hope. And in fact, there's a whole conversation about that between the what is the main bad guy of this movie and Furiosa near the end of the movie. There's a whole conversation about hope and hate, which we will, I'm sure, get to. But it's so bleak, and there's no hope. And this one's even bleaker. That's not a real word. Is it more bleak?
More bleak.
More bleak. Because we already know her home's gone.
Yep.
We know that from the first one. And so she's even younger and has this hope. We see her, how she gets taken out of her home. And that's like the thing carrying her through the whole movie. Is she's like, one day I'm going to go back home. And you're just sitting there like, no, you're not.
No, you passed your home and you didn't even know it. So
it's a pretty bleak movie, but currently it's sitting at 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Here's the blurb. Snatched from the green place of many mothers. This dude, George Miller, wow. His imagination's crazy. Snatched from the green place of many mothers, young Furiosa falls into the hands of a great biker horde led by the warlord Dementus. Sweeping through the wasteland, they come across the Citadel, presided over by the Immortan Joe, who is from the last movie. Mm-hmm. As the two tyrants fight for dominance, Furiosa soon finds herself in a nonstop battle to make her way home. They ain't lying.
Yep.
It is nonstop. Directed by George Miller. This movie only cost $168 million to make, which compared to your blockbusters these days, especially action-filled movies, that's pretty cheap.
I bet they'll be thankful that they only spent 168.
Yeah, as we are recording this, the box office for the first weekend did not go well for anything, really. It's like a record low for Memorial Day.
I blame Garfield.
Well, it tied for number one with Garfield. Who is seeing Garfield?
My nieces and nephew.
But why? Your nieces and nephews have no idea who Garfield is, do they?
Nope.
Nobody under the age of 35 knows who Garfield is. I can't believe Garfield made $31 million. Furiosa only made $31 million. So they tied. It's a big deal. Everybody's talking about it. I don't know. Is Furiosa the kind of movie that can generate the kind of word of mouth that builds it, like an Oppenheimer or something? I don't think it is it? This is a movie like the people that went and saw this movie, the people that knew they were going to go see it.
I am hoping that maybe Memorial Day weekend just really is not a great movie weekend, because that's the weekend people go camping.
But isn't it usually?
I think they hype it up. I don't believe it is.
Okay.
I'm going to be cynical for this.
I'm ready to take your word for it. Essentially, this movie is exactly what the blurb said. She gets snatched as a kid. We see time pass. We take a couple time jumps, And basically, she gets caught in the middle of two of these warlords going at each other. Now, one of the warlords ends up in the last movie that takes place after this one. So we know he makes it.
Yep.
And the other one's played by Chris Hemsworth, who's great.
I had a friend, and I was talking to him about this movie, and he's like, I'll wait a bit to watch it. I'm not really big into prequels, especially if I already know what's going to happen. I'm like, so what do you think happens? And he's like, well, you know, Furiosa is going to lose an arm at some point. And Chris Hemsworth wasn't in the sequel, so you just assume Chris Hemsworth's not making it out. And I'm like, well, your logic is sound.
I don't know. That didn't bother me. But I wasn't a huge fan of Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh, Fury Road has probably been watched 20 times in my house.
Like, I didn't hate it.
Well, Leah, like, absolutely loves it. So she'll get in movies where she'll, like, want to watch them again and again. And a lot of the time I'll be like, well, I'm going to read or I'm going to do something else. That's one I won't leave because I actually do enjoy it. There's enough action. There's enough things happening in it. And the story moves so quickly. At the end, it actually is kind of a hopeful moment. And I honestly wanted them to continue on with Max before they actually addressed like how Furiosa got there. I also would have been okay if we had done just a reboot of Mad Max in general, because like I'm wanting to know more about like why he's haunted by his family and stuff.
Well, right. If you want answers or closure, this is the wrong movie series for you. Mm-hmm. Because that was the maddening thing about the old Max movies, was he's just on to the next awful, bleak adventure.
It sounds like Australia.
Well, the good news is there's no animals left to kill you because it is bleak and dry.
Well, actually take that back, because in Fury Road, because we watched it after watching Furiosa, and in Furiosa, they kill a lizard in both movies, like run over it. And I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, that gecko is like the last surviving animal life in Australia. And these dudes in their whacked out 70s muscle cars running them over. Yeah. How'd they get that lizard in the skull? Nobody knows. It just makes good cinema.
It does.
Marty was like, this is cinema. He probably loves George Miller. And on that note, let's get to what's good. And I'll go first because this plays right into it. The cinematography is gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. And for as bleak of movies as these are, I don't know that anyone makes a desert, lifeless landscape as beautiful as George Miller is able to get out of his camera people.
I will agree. Mad Max, the whole franchise, does a great job of capturing the essence of a post-apocalyptic world and just death and chaos every which way. And you're like, this is visually appeasing to the eye.
Yeah, there's a point in the movie where there's a narration, and I think it's by the history guy.
Yeah, the history,
the old man. And
historian.
He's talking about wars, and they're like zooms over the globe of the Earth, and then it zooms in on Australia. And as you're zooming in, you can see Australia is just brown. There's no green space anywhere, and it just adds to the bleakness. Like there's literally nowhere for them to go. It's just awful.
It was during that moment I'm like, I wonder what Kansas looks like.
Well, that's again. When you watched any of the movies in this series, that's the sort of stuff you're wanting to know. Like, how's the rest of the world doing?
Is there a mad Cody just roaming Kansas?
Is everywhere a weird car nightmare? Or is it just Australia who've done this weird thing with
gasoline?
The cars? Yeah, and gasoline, and they worship a god called V8. Clever. Man, George Miller, the mind of George Miller is just so odd. These movies are so odd, and you can't help but be curious about them, even if it's not your cup of tea. But I will say, the thing that always held me back from loving Mad Max movies was this: I'm never going to know what's really going on. It's just bleakness.
Do you need to know everything?
I understand the movie, you're supposed to be feeling the lack of hope that the main character feels. Max in the Max movies, Furiosa in this movie, and you just feel that. Except for this movie, Furiosa actually has hope of making it back to her lush greenscape of a home that we already know is gone.
That is a negative of doing a prequel.
Oh man. It's a rough watch. I think all the Road Warrior movies, but there's something about them too that you just can't not watch them. They're just good. They're just well executed, well done movies. And so, the cinematography is gorgeous. Why don't you tell me something good?
I'll say whoever did the casting, you did a good job. Anya Taylor-Joy, phenomenal in everything she is in. She is a generational talent, and it would be hard to get someone that can have the gravitas of a Charlize Theron. And Anya was the person that they chose, and they chose wisely.
This is the first thing I've really watched that she was featured in.
Oh.
I was pretty impressed. And she's one of those actors/actresses who can pull this sort of role off where you don't talk a whole lot, but she can tell you something with her eyes, with her facial expressions.
So another meme I saw on X talked about, it had Charlize Theron saying, "I hate Tom Hardy," and Tom Hardy saying, "I hate Charlize Theron," and then had Anya Taylor-Joy far distant stare, and Chris Hemsworth saying, "I love making movies." And I'm like, that's accurate. Her stare was amazing. She's been in a ton of things, and so if you haven't watched any of them, I might recommend The Witch. The Northman, she was good in.
I've heard the chess show was good.
Yeah, Last Night in Soho, she was phenomenal. Dune Part 2, she's in it a little bit, uncredited. And, of course, everyone, their mom evidently has seen the Super Mario Bros. She was Princess Peach.
Was she? I didn't even know that.
Yep. You're welcome.
Chris Hemsworth was great in this, too, for what it's worth. He was really kind of amazing in that role and kind of just something different than what you're used to seeing him as.
First, maybe half of the movie, I was questioning, like, do I like him as a bad guy? Do I need this? And then the second half of the movie happened, especially with his soliloquies, plural, towards the end. And I'm like, okay, you're back in my good graces.
Well, it'd be interesting to know whether he was directed in certain ways or whether he made acting choices. His voice takes a lot. It takes some time to get used to because he sounds very nerdy. He's got like this high pitched nasally thing going on. And it's so weird because he's such a mountain of a man and he's a leader. Like there's people following him right when we meet him. And you're just like, who would follow this dude? The voice is wild.
And in true Mad Max fashion, like his motorcycle is like a chariot.
The chariot with the 3 motorcycles that he controls them all with like this bar system.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Yeah, that was in my notes as what's good. Dementus's chariot.
Yes.
But that's just back. We're back to George Miller again, and just the kind of this wildness, this imagination he has. I'm not even sure the advantage of that.
There's not one. It just looks cool.
It looks rad. There was several times watching this movie where I'm sitting there, I'm kind of engrossed in it because you don't have any choice but to be engrossed in it or just take a nap.
Yep.
Because it's
Those
just
are
constant.
two options.
It's chaos and action, and you're just into it or you're not. And I'm engrossed in it. Several times, it was like the 80s would come back to me. I'm like, this is just rad. This is just rad. So rad.
Why are they engraving the side of the tanker? I don't know.
Because it looks rad. There's several of the creative choices and story choices in this movie. I'm just like, I think they just wanted to make something rad.
The truck driver, Jack, I'm like, you know what? You deserve to be in a movie, maybe a remake of Over the Top. That was my thought during the movie.
Yes, for sure. For sure. I kept waiting for them to pull a fast one and say that was Max's dad. Were you kind of waiting for that? I know that the age, that's not even close to working.
It wouldn't work, but I'm glad I rewatched Fury Road because I got a good time frame of how long she had been gone. Because she says, like, I don't remember how many days it was, but I typed into Google and it's like 19.7 years. And so Furiosa had been gone from the green place with the mothers for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
That's how much time had passed between her getting kidnapped and we meet her in Mad Max Fury Road.
And I believe we do get a Max cameo.
Allegedly, yes.
All you see is the back of him.
Yep.
On a cliff with his car. And you assume it's him and you assume he's the one who saved her. Because she was like going to die out in the desert. And next thing you know, she's been saved by the maggot people. And I've never said that sentence before, but you know, when you watch a Mad Max movie, it's like the maggot people are there.
I don't know how the maggot people live.
Can we just talk about the maggot people, for instance? What is her business? What is she doing? She's got like arms and legs just randomly hanging, and there's maggots in them and all over. And she's apparently helped Furiosa with the losing of her arm. And you're led to believe at first that the maggots are in her arm, but it wasn't because George Miller tricked you with the direction. She's trying to get her to stay. She's like, it's a good life. She's like, Michael Scott, it's a good life. Stay with us. And I'm like, no, don't. I don't know what her business is, but it looks smelly.
Smelly, and what are you doing with those bodies?
It's the most insane thing. There's so many moments in this movie where like, I'm not even sure this makes sense. What is it this person does with these?
In a post-apocalyptic world, I don't know if you need to make much sense.
Oh, man, I don't think I want to go down that rabbit hole. She's selling, like, you know, not chicken legs, but...
Yep.
I have here in my notes, the world building is so rich, though. I mean, it is like a fever dream, and it's crazy. But, man, the attention to detail of these characters, I shouldn't remember that side character. She's in the movie for about 10 seconds.
She is.
I will never forget it because I'm just was consumed with like, well, what is going on with her?
Maggots.
And there's all sorts of characters like that, including the Pale Man group. What are they actually called? The War Boys?
Yes.
So these are the guys all in white and they are bald. I call them the Pale Man group because they're bald and they're painted white instead of blue, like the Blue Man group. You get it.
Yes.
And they all look for Warrior's death, basically. And they're from the first one, and they're here again in the second one. And they all believe they can go to Valhalla. It's this weird, like, cross-cultural thing with Australia, post-apocalyptic Australia and Norse mythology, which is never really explained.
It was definitely made for Chris Hemsworth.
It's so odd. It's so odd. But, yeah, that was in my notes as something good on the movie is... You can't argue. The world building has depth and is rich. What else is good?
You know, we've covered so much with the cinematography because, like, even when Furiosa's mom is tracking Chris Hemsworth's party down and then, like, she gets trapped, like, all that is just visually stunning and it draws you in and then you feel for Furiosa. But there's these little quips and lines that are said throughout the movie that eventually get payoffs. because Chris Hemsworth calls Furiosa Lil D.
Yeah.
Then at the very end of the movie, he's like, Little D, you grew up.
Yeah.
And I was laughing.
It takes him forever
Oh, yeah.
to figure it out. And she basically has to kind of clue him in.
Which, I mean, A, it's been several years, but B, I think he should have known because not many people have all their teeth. And
Yeah, right?
she doesn't have any of the, like, cancerous growth that most of the others have.
Yeah. And again, I want to know what has happened. We get a little... I wanted to replay the guy talking about the wars.
Yeah.
Because he's basically going through history. Then he says World Wars 1, 2, and 3. And then he starts mentioning a bunch of other wars. And I'm like, slow down. I can't write fast enough. And he mentioned like 5, 6, 7. It wasn't just one big nuclear war to end all wars. There was lots of wars, and apparently
I need to know what year this takes place.
right. But George Miller, he's not going to give us those answers. Other things I have is for what's good is just the mayhem. The mayhem of this movie in any given moment in these action scenes. Whatever the most crazy thing possibility is what is going to happen. I mean, there's semis flipping and there's, just nutty stunt work and action set pieces. And it's just mayhem. And I have written here, and I'm not sure who's going to this may be something so underneath the radar, even for 80s kids. So there was this book series that was very much like a role-playing choose your own adventure. Because it wasn't just choose your own adventure. It was choose your own adventure, but also you had dice and you rolled and you kept track of your stats as you were going through the book.
Oh.
And it was called Car Wars. And I deeply loved it. And it was very Mad Max-ish, like the whole world you were in. And you had a car and you could you got money from completing missions in the book, and then you would be able to purchase new cars at certain times that had higher hit points. And it was so cool. And I'm trying to think of when the age I was around. I want to say I was 12, 13. So this would have been late 80s. Anyways, if any listeners were fans of the Car Wars book, choose your own adventure / role-playing book series, Car Wars, please let me know. I used to buy them at this toy store in downtown Lawrence called Fun and Games, which was a cool store that's no longer there, but a lot of my childhood, a lot of fond childhood memories in that store. Let us know if you know about Car Wars. Such an original name. Do you have anything else good?
I don't think so.
Okay. What's not so good?
Chris Hemsworth's prosthetic nose.
Not a fan.
It took me out of quite a few close-up scenes. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like Bradley Cooper's prosthetic nose in that movie that he directed and made about the guy that was an orchestra conductor.
Honestly, it fits with the voice, though.
It does.
It fits with the nasally voice. They did a good job of, he can't be pretty.
No.
He can't be pretty. And Chris Hemsworth is a pretty dude. He is what I believe the youth would call man pretty. I don't know. I didn't really notice it much.
So I told that to another friend that the prosthetic nose took me out of quite a few scenes. And he's like, oh, I didn't even realize his nose was a prosthetic. And I'm like,
How could you not notice?
It's like going back and watching the Batman movie with Val Kilmer and Nicole Kidman and being like, you don't have the same nose, Nicole Kidman. Like, it's so noticeable.
We just went there. Sometimes those actresses get those things done, and I'm like, I thought you looked better the old way. I just don't understand the whole... I think I'm not a big understander of the changing your physical appearance type thing. I didn't know we were going to go on this tangent, but you brought up Nicole Kidman, And it is noticeable when you watch that movie.
It is super noticeable. I'm like, I've seen the AMC commercials. Your nose looks so much different.
What's crazy is when we did the Be Kind rewind recently on Batman Forever, I thought, man, she looks stunning. I just can't imagine someone who most people would think looks stunning getting work done. That's just such a weird concept to me. Well,
Yeah.
why do you think we do that? Is it like what do they call it now? When you see something in the mirror, there's a condition. You're the mental health guy. When you see something in the mirror that's not there, there's a condition that we have a name for it.
Now you put me on the spot.
And
Thanks a
of
lot.
course you don't. It's like, listen, we're recording this on Memorial Day.
Yeah.
In the evening. We're worn out. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
You don't have to come up with it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's a name for it. And I just wonder. I didn't know we were going to
It
go into
definitely
this.
is a cognitive distortion that, like, oh my goodness, my nose is so hideous. When like
Yeah, she probably thought that.
it's not. Now, if she had sleep apnea and the surgery she got fixed it, well, then that's fine.
I'd like to hear her side of the story because I bet it was she got made fun of in like 5th or 6th grade. Some cruel boy made fun of her and it just became a thing in her head.
Or if Tom Cruise said anything.
That Tom Cruise. I only had one note on what's not so good. And for that, it was, I have a question. What's the opposite of charm? Because whatever that is these movies. There's no charm to be had in this movies. It's bleak. It's brutal. Like you said, Leah watches Mad Max Fury Road repeatedly.
Oh, yeah.
And my question would be is why? What is it that you like about these movies? Because the thing that I get out of the movies I rewatch is they're almost always high on what I would call a charm factor. There's a charm to them.
So there is one glimpse of charm in this movie. And it's just a glimpse. And it quickly dies. But it's
As most things do in this movie.
Yes, it's the truck driver Jack.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he is charming in this. Like, he's compassionate.
That's
he's
true.
caring. He's dead.
And again, does it without words.
Yep.
Yeah, you can see the whole budding relationship between him and Furiosa is done almost wordlessly. Do you have anything else for what's not good?
So there's something off with this movie. And I don't know how to word it. But like Mad Max Fury Road, I guess it had enough beats to keep you going through the chaos and the divulgence into the decrepitness of the post-apocalyptic world, where this, I don't want to say it drug, but it just didn't have all the beats.
I actually think this is a simple one to diagnose.
Okay.
So in the first one, the whole point is she's trying to get the girls out.
Yes.
So Immortan Joe's harem, who we see her introduction to them in this movie, and we see a little bit at the end of the beginning of her trying to get them out. Mm-hmm. And that kind of keeps you going through the whole movie. There's this underlying mission for her in that movie to save these women, to get them out of there. Whereas in this movie, as we've already discussed, the thing that's in the background, the thing that's supposed to keep her going is that she's going to go home someday. And the audience already knows she's not.
Well, and especially for this movie, she doesn't even get an attempt to try to go home. And like, we know that she hasn't made it home by the time Mad Max Fury Road happens. So like, there really isn't a mission for her at this point, because we know she doesn't get to attempt it until Mad Max Fury Road.
In all honesty, I think it's too bleak. I think that was a dirty trick George Miller pulled by letting the audience in on the fact that her home, her lush paradise, Garden of Eden type home is gone too. Because like, I feel like we should have at least been able to see her discover that.
She learns it's the crow people on the stilts walking in the mud.
I mean, yeah, but she doesn't get to go there. She doesn't.
She
doesn't
passes through it.
She doesn't get that moment. It's
And
just,
the old ladies are like, "Oh, honey, you passed it."
man, that's rough. It's just rough.
And then like half the old ladies get shot on the way back.
Because of course they do. These movies are not for the faint of heart.
They are not.
If you're into character-driven, where you fall in love with the characters type stories, don't watch these movies.
Fall in love with people that have their name in the title. That is what I recommend.
Just, not her arm.
Yeah.
not their appendages.
The whole movie, I was waiting like, okay, how'd she lose her arm?
Oh, man,
So
it's brutal, too.
I was waiting for that, and then I'm like, hey!
Everyone becomes that Leonardo DiCaprio meme, like,
Yeah.
ooh, that's how it happens. Although that's not. Because when she injures it, you think, oh, that's it. But actually, it's way worse. And I won't spoil it for you. You just got to see the movie. It's very, well, let's just say it's Aaron Ralston-y.
It is.
And if you know, you know. All right. Deeper themes. I think we see the power of cults in this movie. There's a very culty, all the Mad Max movies have this, the cult of personality, leadership in a post-apocalyptic world. What worldly power looks like when the foundations are gone.
Yeah, and like how quickly it gets warped. Because there's times early on with Chris Hemsworth that you're like, okay, well, clearly he's not on the up and up, but he does seem to care in this moment.
Yeah, but it's all selfishly motivated. Mm-hmm. It becomes clear. Who's the worst dude? Who is it Dementis or is it Immortan Joe? Who would you rather be under their thumb? Would you rather be under Dementis' thumb or Immortan Joe? I think I'm gonna have to go with Immortan Joe.
Well, Immortan Joe, if you are in the hierarchy, and you actually get to live up top, where all the green is, it's a good life. Dementis, everyone was suffering, and as you said, they zoom in on Australia and there's no green.
Well, it's interesting. They actually make a point of showing that Dementis, Chris Hemsworth character, is not a very good leader.
No.
In fact, like the guy that's been removed from the leadership of Gasoline City, or whatever it's called.
Gasoline.
The guy that's been removed, he's like painting a painting. He's recreating this famous painting, and it's nice and clean. And then we see it later, and it's just a mess. So there's the power of cult of personality, but also cults, like just how it becomes a faith. So, Immortan Joe has the War Boys, who are all just very much, they see him as a god. It's interesting that the worse life gets, the more humans bank on identity. And we kind of know that through our stories. We tell that story through stories. And so identity means everything to the War Boys, right?
It does.
So much so that they're willing to end their life at when the moment's right for them.
You like spray some aerosol can in your mouth and you're ready to go.
So weird. So weird. Let's talk about the conversation at the end between Dementis and Furiosa, where he's talking about that there is no hope, that hate has fueled her. That
hate and revenge.
And it could only be hate. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with the assessment? I think humans, we want to think that.
I think that it was definitely the most eloquent thing said in the whole movie.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think there's some partial truths to it that, like, on the surface, it appears like this.
Humans like stories like this because she's going out and being the angel of death. It's clearly about revenge, and we like this stuff.
She's the fifth horseman of the apocalypse.
That's what she's referred to. Yes. And I think we just like those kind of stories, but we intrinsically know that hope is a more powerful driver than hate. The problem is that hate, the control is still firmly in our grasp, whereas hope, we are sacrificing control. We're saying, my hope is so great, I'm going to give up control.
In which throughout the whole movie, she's constantly pulling out this seed. And that is like her image of hope. that keeps her going. And so, like, what has gotten her through the 20 years of being away from the green place with the mothers is just hope. I wouldn't say it's the hate that's driven her, but it's the hate that drove her to the desert to find Dementus.
Maybe, just maybe, it is part of the story to extrapolate that it's not hate, that it is the hope that she has that has kept her going. It's the hate that's made her want revenge and go killing, but it's the hope that's actually kept her going, because later on in that, one of the last things he says in that conversation, he says, "We are the already dead," which makes sense for his character because he doesn't really seem to care about anything.
A nihilist.
A nihilist, yeah. Like, he just doesn't care. And he doesn't believe in anything.
I think that he is all about, like, well, I might as well risk it and see if I come up out on the winning side. And if I don't, I'm done. And that's good.
And then his motivation comes out. He says, "We're already dead. We're already dead. It's so bleak. I have no hope. Why would I act in any sort of way?" So when you connect the dots there, she is acting for the greater good at times, which means she has hope.
Literally, she keeps this seed in her hair when she has hair. She keeps it. I don't know where she keeps it when she doesn't have hair.
The seed's important. I don't know how it stays in her hair when she's in a vehicle that flips 40 times, but
she is the most bad mamma jamma out on the desert.
I'll tell you what, she is that. These two movies, Charlize Theron in Mad Max Fury Road and Anya Taylor-Joy in this one, are the ultimate girl power movies.
And I think for some people that is a driving force to watch them, and I think that's good.
You know, I thought it was all Charlize. I was like, Charlize is just really good at, like, she had made a couple other action movies, and you just think, man, she's a good enough actress where it's believable. But I thought Anya Taylor-Joy was absolutely believable.
Now, my question for you is, did it take away knowing what Furiosa would look like? Because Charlize and Anya don't really resemble each other that much.
I've only seen Fury Road once, so it wasn't a big deal for me. I will say, however, I had a hard time believing they would not have recognized that Anya Taylor-Joy's character, Furiosa, was a girl sooner.
Mm-hmm.
They tried, like, I mean, she's pretending to be a boy for quite a while, where, like, even the clothes she's wearing, like, someone would have noticed, bro.
Yeah.
Especially in that environment. But
yes,
it worked. Who's the winner of the movie, Cody?
I mean, I am going to say Anya Taylor-Joy just because I think this now puts another feather in her cap that, like, oh, I can do these serious roles, I can do funny roles, I can do action movie roles, and I can do action movie roles where I am doing the action. And so,
two questions. Does it damage that if this movie does poorly on its box office return? Or part two, is there a greater problem with movie theaters, the box office in general, and movie theater going? I think people were so excited to get out again after COVID that it erased a lot of the fears we had, but I wondered if our fears were founded, that it changed fundamentally how we want to experience these.
Okay, so to answer the first part, I think anyone that watches this movie will say that she wasn't the issue. I also think that the way we take in movies definitely has changed. Like, people now don't necessarily feel like I need to see it on the super big screen. I have a big enough screen at my house, and streaming's so easy. But what the studios have done is also awful. Case in point, The Fall Guy. We watched it. It was out in theaters for like just a few weeks, and then they immediately put it to streaming.
Yeah, that was wild.
Hello. Like, I can remember in college being like, I don't want to go the first 2 weekends. It's going to be packed. I'll wait till the third or fourth weekend, catch it then.
Over the summer, movies would be in the theater for weeks?
Yep. And now it's like if you don't catch it opening weekend, it might just go straight to streaming. I did get a message saying this is the lowest box office for a Memorial Day blockbuster in 43 years with adjusted inflation.
Whoa. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I don't disagree with your pick. I think Anya Taylor-Joy should be the winner of this movie. She's fantastic in it, but I wonder about if this damages that at all, her box office draw. And if it was we can get into other arguments too, whether if it was a man, would it have the same effect? Does the Fall Guy flopping hurt Ryan Gosling as much as this flopping hurts Anya Taylor-Joy? Probably not. And is that fair? But, let's not go there.
There's a movie that's out that did not tie for the box office lead, and it had a different Ryan in it. With Ryan Reynolds.
That's true, too.
And I did see a tweet that's like, if you remove Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds isn't necessarily a box office draw. Now, you might watch the movie later and think, well, that was a good movie, but he's not necessarily a huge box office draw.
I'm just going to let you in on a little secret about me. For me, Ryan Reynolds has never really topped Best Friends. I love that movie so much.
For me, the best Ryan Reynolds is Two Guys, a Girl, and the Pizza Place. So,
my winner of the movie, I'll go with a different one since you said Anya Taylor-Joy. I think that's a good pick. I'm going to go with Chris Hemsworth because I think he proves in this role that he can do something different besides handsome guy, heroic guy, funny guy. He was funny guy in the Ghostbusters reboot with the all-female cast.
Yep.
Where he brought the comedy. And then this, it's sneaky good in a way, I think, because he's the bad guy. He's legitimately the bad guy. And yet,
in a movie full of bad guys.
And yet we had a problem going, well, which one would you rather be under? Immortan Joe or Chris Hemsworth's Dementis character? And I think that's because he still brings a level of charm into the character that he's playing, even though he's completely untrustworthy and very brutal and a nihilist, which the nihilists are even scarier. Immortan Joe's driving force, and that's to keep his life good.
Yep.
He's a king. Whereas Dementis is just, he doesn't believe anything. He's more like a Joker type character, except not quite as towards the extreme edges.
It just makes me think of the Big Lebowski. Nihilist.
Yeah, the nihilist, dude. I mean, say what you want about the state of, anyways. Who's your loser of the movie?
So I'll go with the person that was nearly my almost winner, Tom Burke, who played Praetorian Jack, the truck driver.
Yeah.
Because he does a phenomenal job in this movie, but evidently no one and their mom's watching it. So.
Yeah, nobody's going to remember him.
And so no one's going to see it or know that he did a good job in it. And so it was a waste of effort. I'm sorry. You did a good job.
Yeah, he was really good in this movie. I had a hard time picking a loser in this movie. So I'm just going to go... if the box office, this is a little bit of a cheat because we already know what the box office is as we're recording.
Well, for the opening weekend.
And I'm going to just go with Mad Max fans who want more stories in this world because this is not good.
I mean, I don't know how many years we had between like Thunderdome and Fury Road, but.
Well, I know there was people out there who secretly had hoped, hey, is he going to tell more stories with Mad Max using Tom Hardy? It was kind of surprising when the news came out that he was going to make this Furiosa prequel. I'm glad he did. I enjoyed my movie-going experience, even though it's not my cup of tea, I don't think. It was good, and so I'm going to say the loser of the movie is the fans of this world, because I'm not sure this might be the last one.
Could be.
So George Miller fans and Road Warrior fans and Mad Max, and just enjoy it for what it is. And repeat viewings, I guess.
So I feel like a couple months ago, they were hopeful for a box office that was probably triple this.
Yeah.
And to see these numbers, oof.
Do you want more? How about we end on this? This is the bottom line question. Do you want more of these out of this world?
Oh, yeah. I'm all about the post-apocalyptic world. Yeah, I'm down to keep finding out more about this world. They make so many Planet of the Apes movies. Might as well make Mad Max movies.
I'm glad you brought that up because I recently watched with my kids Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Thank you for saying it like that.
We watched it and my kids enjoyed it. And it was that movie, we talked about it in the prequel episode last week, the Pop Culture Draft, about how unexpected that movie is. That it's nothing like the original Planet of the Apes movies. It's very early. Like, you don't get the talking upright battle apes until very near the end. And then even then, not what you expect from a Planet of the Apes movie. And in fact, we talked about it in a way. It was like, I don't even know who is the brave Hollywood exec who said, all right, let's do it. Because I don't even know. I have a hard time believing you get that movie made. But I'm glad they made it because I liked it. I think you could do that with this world. So like George Miller can ride off into the sunset, bring in a new guy and say, let's do a prequel way back where we see the very beginning. Let's go from the place where people still had hope and turn it to bleakness.
Just don't have J.J. Abrams be the world builder, please and thank you.
How many prosthetic noses out of 10 are you giving this movie, Cody?
So I think that if it hadn't been hyped up so much, literally my friend Tyreek Hill tweeted best movie of the year so far. And I saw that right before I went into the movie theaters.
That fits.
And I'm like, I don't know if this was the best movie of the year. Yeah. And it's a step down from Fury Road. And so I'll give it 7. I'll be generous.
I could totally see a football player who gets like they literally participate in something that gets the adrenaline highs. And so I get that. If you're that kind of dude, you're going to love movies like this. And so I get it. For me, it's a 5. For me, it's just a plain 5 because it's just a movie for me. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I just experienced it, which is fine. But as a movie critic, like with a critique, I'm going to give it a 7 because it's clearly, I mean, we talked about the cinematography, the directing. It's executed amazingly. It's just not my personal cup of tea.
Yep. That's why I went a 7. Like in my heart, I feel like it's a 4 because I had such high hopes. And it was like, well, this didn't live up to it. The only good part was Anya.
Well, it's interesting to hear your angle as someone who enjoyed the first one, though, because I felt the same way about the first one that I felt about this one. At the end of it, I knew I'd watched something executed well, but it just wasn't my thing.
So I do know other people that love Fury Road that watched this and thought it really wasn't that far of a step down, that it was right in the same vein. And I'm like, I feel we watch different movies.
Yeah.
So
Interesting stuff. All right. Tell us what you thought. Have you seen Furiosa? Or did you just listen to this episode without having seen it? Maybe you did. Do you want to see it? What are your comments? Do you agree with what we thought was good? What was bad? Let us know on the social media posts that go along with this episode. As always, make sure and subscribe and review us when you can on whatever platforms you can. Join the community group on Facebook as well. We do a lot more interacting inside that group. That is fun for you as well. And of course, share the podcast with your friends on social media. Share our posts as much as you can. Repost them and tell people why you love the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.